is subject to Vermont income tax in 2 of the last 4 completed calendar quarters. There is not a minimum hour requirement or a minimum earning requirement. You just have to have been attached to the Vermont labor market for 2 quarters in the last 4. The funding for the program is paid for by a payroll tax that's split between the employer and the employee. As introduced, H66 has a 0.58% payroll tax, and the Senate version has a 0.5% payroll tax. So essentially, we're looking at employees paying roughly 0.25 to 0.29% on each paycheck, and employers covering the other half. Self-employed individuals are allowed to opt into the program. But they would pay the full tax rate, wherever it ends up being. So 0.5, 0.55, 0.58, whatever it ends up coming out as. And those taxes are on the first $320,000 of earnings. So that's virtually, there are very few people in Vermont who earn above that. So essentially all wages for nearly all Vermonters. Benefit amount is 100% of your combined self-employment and employment income up to a cap of the state average weekly wage, which is currently $1,135 a week. So that would change with time as wages go up or down. And then there is no waiting period for benefits. Some other states impose a 1-week waiting period before you can claim benefits. In Vermont, there's no waiting period. So that's the high level on the paid leave portion of the program. The bill also includes expansions to the job protections for taking leave. So currently, you're only eligible for job protections in Vermont if you've worked for your employer for a year for an average of 30 hours a week, and your employer is large enough to be covered by the paid leave law, which means that for parental leave, they have at least 10 employees who average 30 hours a week. And for medical leave and family care leave, 15 employees who average 30 hours a week. The H66 and the Senate bill would both change that so that it would cover all employers regardless of size. And it would allow employees who are eligible for the paid family leave insurance program to also get job protected leave, as well as the current eligibility criteria. So it becomes an either or. Either you've been employed for your employer for a year for an average of 30 hours a week, or you've earned wages or self-employment income that's subject to Vermont tax in 2 of the last 4 completed calendar quarters. The family leave law also gets an expanded definition of family member to match up with the family leave insurance program. So that expands to include things like legal guardians, individuals standing in place of a parent, grandchildren, and siblings. And then, like I mentioned before, that significant personal bond that's like a family relationship, even if there's no either legal or blood connection between the 2 individuals. And then the bill also includes an addition of a new job protected safe leave law. As I mentioned before, that's for circumstances related to domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking. So those are the main components of the program at a really high level. I know you've got some other folks that you're hearing from today, so I'll take questions and then turn it over.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Damien on, and I'm sorry I haven't been able to share the screen, but I've been trying. I did put the link to the document in the chat, so if anyone wants to take a look at that. So are there any questions? All right.
Pamela.
Oh, Pamela. All right. Sorry, I just saw your hand.
Still muted. Yeah, I had to get to the unmute, sorry. I'm wondering about what kind of documentation requirements there will be. How do you prove the relationship and prove the necessity?
So the necessity questions a little bit easier. So the bill has essentially 3 eligibility requirements. The first is that you've met the income or the payment requirements of 2 calendar quarters in the last 4. The second is that you provide appropriate documentation, and that's going to vary depending on the reason you're taking the leave. So, for example, if you're collecting parental leave benefits, you would be providing either a note from a healthcare provider that you've just had the birth, a proof of adoption, or adoption paperwork showing that it's in process, or paperwork related to the foster care placement. For a medical condition, there would be basically documentation of the need for the leave, which is very similar to what you would provide to, or essentially identical to what you would provide to an employer now if you were taking an FMLA leave. It doesn't have to go into the details of the medical condition, but you do need to have some healthcare provider say that there's a condition here for which the individual needs to take 6 weeks to recover. And the doctors will provide generally a generalized statement. There's a provision in the bill that allows the division that would be administering the program to come back and request additional documentation if they need it. But in general, the documentation would track the existing law. And then for the safe leave, there's a broad variety of documentation that's allowed, which could include documentation from law enforcement, social services worker or mental health worker, clergy, and also allows for a sworn document to be provided by the individual requesting leave, particularly because domestic violence, the situation, it often involves a loved one. So oftentimes the individual may not want to involve law enforcement. So they've gone to a mental health counselor or something like that. With the military leave, military orders or other documentation from the military are typically, just a copy of them is typically what's required. There is also, with the wage replacement here, you have a window of 60 days before and 60 days after the leave starts to file for your benefits. So individuals can file after the leave has started and then receive back paid wage replacement for that time. Does that answer your question?
It mostly does. I thought it was a very good explanation. I'm thinking of when people, so I'm thinking very personally. So my family members would need to use it intermittently to help me with doctor's appointments or some other appointment that I won't remember when it's done. And now I don't know what the hell the doctor said to me. So is that something like each year my PCP could say, yes, there's an ongoing need, and, you know, yep, her daughter or her husband will need to take the occasional day off for medical appointments?
Yeah, that's exactly what could happen. And that's currently provided for under both the state and the federal job protected leave laws, which don't provide payment.
Right.
And it basically is documentation from the healthcare provider that they need to take intermittent leave to care for their family member and then, you know, just a general explanation of the reason. And they would be permitted to take the paid leave in increments of 1 day at a time.
Okay.
So if it's 2 days a month, that's what they could request.
Okay, great. I don't want to take up any more time. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Great, thank you for that question. Are there any other questions for Damien?
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Hi, thank you, Damien. That's such a great summary. So we're the Older Vermonters Caucus, as you're aware. And so with the safe place or safe leave section,
Yep.
does it, you mentioned sexual assault and stalking orders. Are older Vermonters who are vulnerable protected under that section if there's an adjudication or some determination made that they're in need of, that they're vulnerable and that they have been harmed or at risk of harm?
Yeah, so if it falls under the definition of, so the law covers, and I apologize because this is an area that I don't know. I'm not an expert on domestic violence and so forth, but if it falls under the definition of domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking, it's covered. If it falls outside of the definition of those three things, it wouldn't be covered by the safe leave law. But that's certainly something that the committees that are currently working on the bill could consider. So I apologize for not knowing more about that area of the law, but my expertise is limited to the employment protections.
No.
So.
Thank you.
Good question, Mary, and I'll see what I can also do to try to track down an answer for you. I see Ruby's hand up.
Sort of an expansion on Mary's question. What about people who are the victims of discriminatory crimes and behaviors?
You're talking about hate crimes, for example?
Yes.
Or, yeah, so again, if it doesn't fall within those definitions, you're basically limited to serious health conditions. So if, God forbid, you were injured seriously, then you could take leave under the family and medical leave portion. I'm just pulling up the definitions here, and so domestic violence covers acts of abuse in a domestic situation. And let me just see what's covered under the acts of abuse here. Yeah, so domestic violence covers acts of abuse between family or household members. So it would not cover, for example, acts of violence related to someone because of a protected characteristic, whether it's their race or their gender identity or their religion, or any number of other protected characteristics that was committed by someone who's outside of their family or household. So their protection under the bill would really be if they were injured in an assault, but it wouldn't protect them. For example, the safe leave protects relocation from an abusive family member, but this wouldn't provide similar protections for someone who's not experiencing a domestic situation.
Damien, just a follow up. The safe leave you said was only 2 weeks?
No, safe leave is 12 weeks. Bereavement leave in the House bill is for up to 2 of the 12 weeks that an individual has per year. And that includes both leave related to, for example, a funeral or a memorial service, but also settling a family member's estate, which admittedly takes much more than 2 weeks, but the 2 weeks allows the individual, for example, to travel to a court hearing or something like that.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining this. I'm sure there'll be a lot more information coming out and, of course, changes as the bill progresses through the legislative process. So, definitely as stuff comes up, please, you're welcome to reach out to me and I'll see what I can come up with. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Ruby. Are you next, or Michelle? Or Kelly?
I think Michelle is next.
All right. Thank you, Michelle, for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Fay, and I'm the Executive Director of Voices for Vermont's Children, which probably feels like an odd person to have at your caucus today.
You're good.
But one of my roles right now is coordinating the Vermont Paid Leave Coalition. And we are a diverse group of, I think, currently 21 organizations that span advocacy groups that represent specific constituencies, the faith community, progressive business networks, and people across the lifespan. So I'm here wearing that hat today. And as always, Damien provided a really, really helpful, clear overview of the bill. I think what might be helpful is for me to lift up the components of essential components of a paid leave program that the coalition is happy to see in H66, and that we would be hoping to maintain as the bill makes its way through the legislative process. I'm just going to pop, it looks like I don't have access to the whole chat, but I'm just going to send to you, Dan, the link to the coalition webpage, just so people can have that for more information or to stay connected. But so we talk about these, I guess there's like 6 essential elements that we tend to talk about. One is that it's universal, so all workers are covered. It includes folks, I think Damien spoke to this, but full-time, part-time, seasonal, as long as you meet that criteria that you've worked 2 out of the last 4 calendar quarters, had wages, you're covered. Comprehensive coverage, which for us means it includes at least parental leave, family caregiving leave, and personal medical leave. Those are sort of the 3 must-haves in a comprehensive, strong paid leave bill. The safe leave and military leave are kind of newer additions that we also are very supportive of. Adequate wage replacement. So this bill, again, as Damien said, has 100% up to the average weekly wage. That in states that have come before us, and there are 11 states and the District of Columbia that have already implemented comprehensive paid leave programs. Some of them, California is the oldest comprehensive, to include family and parental leave. And what they learned in their early years of implementation is if you have low wage replacement, they started out, I think, at 55%, then they moved to a 60 or 70% ceiling on the wage replacement. And they found that low wage workers weren't able to access that benefit, because when you're making barely enough or maybe even not enough to pay for your daily living expenses, taking a 40 or 50% pay cut is as good as not getting any benefit at all, right? So people just weren't availing themselves, or if they did, because they had no choice, they were finding themselves in really difficult financial situations, going into debt, needing to sign up for public services, et cetera. So we're very supportive of a very strong wage replacement. 100% would make this my understanding is it would make Vermont the most generous leave policy in the country. So there's a little bit of sort of wiggle room there for us to meet the policy goals, but we're happy to see that wage replacement high. Job protection, I think that's been fairly covered. The inclusive family definition, that is really important to the coalition. And I think it's something that in my conversations with the members of the coalition who work with and for older Vermonters, have named as a really important aspect to make sure that the support, the caregiving support is there for whomever is acting in that family caregiver, informal caregiver role. And so we know that these days, those bonds can exist outside of sort of the typical nuclear family. And so there may be generations skipped, or maybe a cousin that ends up being, really your aunt, basically, or, have that relationship of like a sister. So, so that's good in this bill. And then We are in favor of public administration. I think that's one thing that there's a fair amount of, conversation about in terms of comparing the administration's plan against what the legislature is proposing. And there are concerns, and there's, a track record of a lack of accountability and increased inequities when it comes to putting the administration of a public good into the hands of a private for-profit corporation. So we are supportive of a publicly administered program. Those are the high overviews. I was going to kind of hold up the pieces that I thought, again, based on my conversations with Ruby and Kelly and Meg, were most important to you all or to the folks you serve, and that was the family definition and that intermittent usage. I think what we've seen in past years as well is, as the bill starts making its way through the legislature and people start being worried about the price tag, they look at what they can cut. And so we're really, in past years, there's been attempts to just cut out the medical leave component, which is the most costly aspect of the bill. That's where most of the leave taking happens. And we have been in the past and continue to be opposed to carving out, giving people the ability to take care of their own health without facing financial hardship. So those are the pieces as we go through that we're just going to be monitoring. I want to make sure there's time for questions and for other folks to talk. I have done, in case it's of interest to you, a few quick, like calculations of what it would look like what would it be for someone who's working $15 an hour full-time or $20 an hour full-time? And what would that look like from both the employer perspective and the employee contribution perspective? And what could they expect in terms of wage replacement? So if that's interesting, I'll share it. If not, I'll turn it over to someone else. Okay.
Thank you, Michelle. So I think next,
Kelly.
if anyone has any questions for Michelle, or we can move on to Kelly.
Great, thank you so much. Is it possible for me to share my screen? Is that all right?
Yeah, I made you a co-host, so you should be able to. Let's see if
Okay.
it works. I couldn't get
Great.
mine to work, but that's
Okay,
probably
great.
operator error. Oh, look at that.
All right. Wonderful. I just wanted I have some visuals that I wanted to share, and thank you, Damien and Michelle. They did a wonderful job outlining the bill, and just want to emphasize some of the key pieces for AARP around the inclusive family definition, the comprehensive coverage, and the adequate wage replacement. And I'm going to share just a couple of slides highlighting some of the most recent research from AARP. This was conducted in 2021. And highlighting the financial impact that family caregiving has, not just on the individual, but the family at large, and ultimately on our economy. And so, and this slide here shows the estimated cost 3 and 4 family caregivers are incurring out-of-pocket costs while they're caregiving. We all know about the emotional toll that family caregiving has, but the financial one is quite significant. So estimated on just over $7,200. And so it's really important for us that the bill continue to cover and have that comprehensive coverage to cover a variety of different situations, including the medical and bereavement leave. And just also want to highlight the importance that family caregiving has, and by keeping older adults out of institutionalized care. And as we're an aging demographic, we will see an increase in disabilities, serious health conditions, and being able to support older adults to be able to age in place is really important to their well-being, both their physical and mental health, but also the cost on the state going into institutionalized care. And then these costs are just broken down as well, so you can see the what that $7,200 looks like, and the biggest expense is seen within the household expenses, and then it goes down. And I wanted to highlight this piece because of the importance around the definition of family staying inclusive. So here you can see that caregivers under the age of 50 report the highest out-of-pocket costs related to caregiving. These caregivers are spending a disproportionate amount on household costs. But here you can also see that although the highest amount is between 35 to 49, but the impact, the financial strain on those between 18 and 34 is of the highest, which I don't think comes to any surprise because those younger individuals have had less time in the workforce to build up financial security. And so just another important piece to highlight of the financial impact that family caregiving can have on the whole economy. All right, and then here I just wanted to highlight the importance around older workers in the workforce. Fastest growing segment of the labor force are those over 55 and older. It's estimated by 2029, 1 in 4 workers will be over the age of 55. So workers of any age may need to take leave at any point, and taking time off for medical leave and other treatments can jeopardize employment and income. So we, on behalf of AARP, feel that paid family medical leave is an essential tool for protecting job security and financial well-being for older workers as well. And so you can see here what how people are taking their time off, if they're having to take unpaid time, reducing their hours, or leaving the workforce altogether. All right, and that's it for my slides. We'll go ahead and stop sharing. All right. Sorry, I'm having some issues here. Are you guys still seeing my screen? Sorry about that. For some reason, I can't get the full Zoom.
I wonder if I make you not a co-host.
There we go.
Oh,
there we go. Sorry, the full Zoom screen wasn't coming up, so I wasn't getting my control panel. Sorry about that. So those are the key pieces for us. And I wanted to highlight, obviously, the financial impact that family caregiving has, comprehensive coverage, inclusive family definition, adequate wage replacement, and that it's universal. And I'm happy to share also the full report that AARP conducted in 2021 on family caregiving, if anybody wants further information. And then I guess I will pass it off to Ruby or Mike.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ruby, would you like to take it from here?
I can. I don't have a huge amount to share. I'm more hoping to answer questions and be part of the conversation. But I guess a couple of points that I will bring up. Michelle did a little bit of digging on data for me, and in terms of medical leave and how it's utilized across the country in different systems, there are sort of 2 demographics that most frequently use these medical leave benefits, being the older cohort in the like 55 to 64 range, and then also the 30s range. So not surprising, but when we think about why people are accessing this, really, parental leave, personal medical leave are major drivers of that work. I would also just highlight a couple of challenges that we know are out there relating to family leave for possibly further discussion. One of the challenges that is really important to name here is that our long-term care and healthcare systems are in active crisis. And to ignore that fact would be, I think, short-sighted and doing those systems a disservice. And So I think we need to recognize and honor that those employers are already struggling to meet wages, are already struggling to compete in the workforce market and to recruit people to healthcare services. So any additional expenses and costs to those systems is going to be really, really challenging. And so I don't want to leave that unsaid. Yeah, I guess that's the big piece. It's important. The expanded definition of family is also an important piece that I just want to mention and make sure that everybody understands. There are a lot of, go do that then. Excuse me, just a sec. I'm going to pass this along actually to Meg. There you are.
Hello, everybody. I also don't have a ton to add right here, but Dan, if you can allow Anna Kim to share her screen. We've put together what we're working on, which is a fact sheet on why paid family and medical leave is important to older Vermonters. And we'll do a very quick preview of that and then welcome feedback from folks if they have ideas of other things that should be included as we start to build out on this. And I guess there's three pieces that I want to touch on before I have Anna share. And Anna, you're going to have to zoom in on that for people to see it. And those are the ways that we see this touching people. One is, as Kelly said, the number of older Vermonters in the workforce that it directly impacts. It is about a quarter of the workforce. So those people will use it themselves. Two, well, I agree with Ruby that we have to look absolutely at the strain we're putting on the direct care system. We also know that this would be a very, very usable and tangible benefit for those who are providing direct care. So folks working in adult days, home health hospice, visiting nurses, et cetera. So it would make it easier for them to do their jobs. And then three, looking at people that have dementia and how this could support them. So yesterday, one of the speakers at the press conference was Pamela Smith, who's on this call, who, as you all know, has younger onset Alzheimer's, and spoke about how a bill like this would allow her daughter or her husband to take off from work to go to a medical appointment with her. And just to provide a little information, Kelly shared the 74,000 family caregivers in Vermont. About a third of those are dementia family caregivers, and they tend to contribute almost twice as much as those caring for people without dementia out of their own pocket, their family pockets, in order to provide that care. So this bill is not a caregiver bill. This is a bill about things we can do to support those people who are caring for people and allow them to care better for the people they're caring for. And particularly thinking about these huge numbers of unpaid family caregivers. I think almost a third of them, but I have to get the exact data, are in what we call the sandwich generation. So they're caring for kids and parents. What can we do to allow them to remain in the workforce, to remain valued in the workforce, and also allow them to be human beings and take off a day or a week or 6 weeks or 12 weeks to care for the people in their family that they are also supporting while they're supporting our economy and while they're supporting their own families with their economic income. So I'm going to have Anna just share real quickly some of the facts we put on this sheet, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to use this with you as we roll out of here. And we need people to be writing letters to the editors, talking to their representatives and senators about this. This will be a tool we can share with you. So if you want to put a fact in it, I'm one of the 28% doing this. You can do that. So I'm going to turn it over to Anna for a quick preview, and then we can all take questions at the end.
Hi, I'm Anna. And like Meg said, it's still like a work in progress. And so if there's any ideas as to things to add or facts that'd be useful, that would be great to know. I don't know if I should read through it or kind of just slowly.
Why don't you just
through it.
highlight the main categories and sort of the top level information so people know what's here, and then they can think about what they might want there to be useful to them.
Okay. So this is what is Bill H66, and then the number of Vermonters in the workforce by age, going I think every 4 years, and then 75 years and over. And then just kind of fast facts about Vermont from the Census Bureau. This is a table from the needs assessment of Vermonters 60 plus, and it's the age of people cared and who's taking care of them. The percent of Vermont workforce by age. I'm still trying to figure out how to make these three little triangles more highlighted because they're the 60 to 64, 65 to 74, and 75 and up. And then sort of a little small overview of the bill. And then this is looking at how people take leave. And so this is the reasons for the most recent leave in the past 12 months. And this is the nature of the health condition for taking leave. Is it a one-time health matter, an injury or illness that now requires routine scheduled care, ongoing health condition, other, or don't know? And then the reasons for the most recent leave in the past 12 months, illness, child, parent, spouse, child, other qualifying reasons. And then I'm still working on the back, and that's going to have some other information. I'm hoping to add quite a bit of stuff about the sandwich generation and yeah, some other things as well.
Thank you so much, Anna. And also we're working with the Women Business Owners Network to get a feel for them, because as I think Michelle said in the beginning, and we're all saying, I think you can stop sharing the screen, as we're all saying, obviously this is a bill that everybody will utilize at some point in their life, but the strain of providing leave without it being covered with pay is particularly impactful on women and multi-generationally on women. So that's why we're leaning into the Women Business Owners Network to see how would it impact them? How does it really impact their workforce and their ability to do business? So that's what we have, Dan, and I think we have a few minutes for questions for folks, for whoever they may want to direct them to.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, if anyone has a question, and I will try to get out the handout that Meg just put up there once they get that finished. And then if anyone wants the data, I'm sure we can get the AARP presentation as well. Yep, okay. So I can send those out next week or sometime in between there and then to the caucus email list.
And I did have one other thing I thought of, sorry, but
Sure.
Because there's so many advocates on the screen, I'm wondering, Michelle, if you could either give it to Dan but like if people want to get engaged, if they want to talk to their legislator, if they have a story that's connected to this, we want and need them. What should they do to connect with us so that we can put that into our outreach plan? Because this is going to take a lot of work from all of us to get over the finish line this year.
Yeah, I sent Dan the link to the website, which has a place to sign on. It's voicesforvtkids.org. And then once you get there, you can go to the menu and find the Paid Leave Coalition, or you can /VT Paid Leave. That's the coalition webpage. You can also just hit me up directly, mfaye@voicesforvtkids.org.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to point out something that Ruby said, and that was when she was talking about the employer's share of this and how already a lot of the agencies that are providing services to older Vermonters this is just another added cost. I have asked legislation be drafted that takes that into account when calculating rates for home and community-based providers that are providing services to older Vermonters. Probably see that in a few days as a bill request, and so I'm interested in that being taken into the reimbursement rates when we're doing those calculations. All right. Any further questions from our caucus? I do want to thank Rep. Anthony and Representative Boyden for being here today, joining us. Thank you so much. Good to see you. And then also our presenters, Damian, Michelle, Meg, Ruby, Kelly, Anna, thank you so much for participating today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you. Next week is Recovery Day, and we'll be talking about recovery services that are available to older Vermonters. And I have Charlie Gurney from the Vermont Department of Health and Tony from Dale, Foland from Dale are going to be here. So that will be next week. There could be someone else also joining in. I've been kind of going back and forth on some other emails. So we're going to look at substance use, addiction recovery, and it will be Recovery Day. So it will fit right in with a lot of the other discussions that are going to be going on in the State House on that day. So I always feel that we really need to think about the impact that substance abuse has on older Vermonters, and want to make sure that we don't forget that in our discussion here in this group. So any other questions or comments or anything someone wants to bring up today before? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Take care.